Hi everyone! Today on our channel there will be an interview with a legend. Vladimir went from being a theoretical physicist to launching his startup in the valley. All along the way he wrote many great articles about his way and about data science, became a Kaggle Grandmaster and became one of the most famous speakers in the ODS community. So let's start and speak with Vladimir about his startup Ternaus.com. And let's start from my first question. Can you tell me how the idea for the current startup came about?
Sure. The idea that I need to, like some people build startups because they can see a pain and it bothers them, and they either see like a good market opportunity or just it bothers them and they want to improve the world. But there's like third category of people, it's rather big. They just want to build startup. They don't know why, they don't know, maybe they don't, maybe they want money or fame or just want to work for themselves. They want more control, or they want to develop this like technical and non-technical skills, but they have no idea of what they can do. And I belong to the third category. My attitude towards startups to some extent, and I think it's correct one, it's like similar to blog post. I know that Anton, like you're writing amazing blog posts, and I learned a lot from them. And after writing a few blog posts, you learn that you don't need an amazing like idea and topic for blog post. You can pick, I don't know, this microphone or this like headphones or this like room or floor, and you can start with it and then twist around and write an amazing blog post that people will read. It will, the idea that it will start in the beginning about this blog post will be different from what at the end, but still it can be a good starting point. So somehow I think similarly about startups, if you pick good direction, not necessarily great idea, and then you start with something and then you collect feedback from the universe and pivot around, it may work out. And if you're skilled in terms of building products, building startups, collecting feedback, you can do it maybe not on every topic, but like you don't need to wait for an ideal idea to merge in your head and jump from it. So in this sense, about like a year and a half ago, when self-driving division of Lyft, where I was working, was sold to Toyota, I left the company and decided that I'm skilled enough in terms of technical, or maybe I'm ready. And I started looking for idea and technical co-founder. And neither worked well. So at a time, a year and a half ago, markets were booming and all like strong technical people. And I was looking for, of course, like someone strong. They had amazing jobs and well paid, or they have their brilliant ideas that they wanted to work on. So for a year and a half, I played the different ideas here and there, learned a bit from them. But then, in the summer, someone told me, and I think it was Max Goncharov, so person who works with Anton, CEO of Cherry Labs, he told me that, okay, Vladimir, you are one of the core developers of this open source library Albumentations. It's rather popular. Why don't you build something on top of it? And Albumentations is indeed popular. I think right now we have about 20,000 downloads per day. Sure, most of them are coming from South Korea, China, and Japan for whatever reason, not even Russia or United States, but still. And it looks like a good like brand, good starting point that you may start like doing something about it. So in July, I started asking people, connected to people who use Albumentations and whole different libraries. And for the month, I had more than 40 meetings, collecting feedback. And there's even blog posts in English and Russian about what I got. So I got a lot of feedback about Albumentations, but I didn't have any idea what to build on top of it. So I started looking at this story like from bigger scope, why people use image augmentation library. And Albumentations helps you to synthetically increase the size of the data set. And I just like, okay, people need more data. Then I started talking to people who like, doing data labeling. And they said that one of the problems they're facing is that you have model, it performs somehow, you have your validation set, and you have like 20 million of unlabeled images, and you need to pick 2,000 of them to send for data labeling. And people use active learning for that. And I decided, okay, let's give it a shot from another story. At the same time, in parallel, and you see, like I'm trying to make this story like as a mosaic, because typically in all the stories, like random stuff is happening from all like directions. There was competition at Kaggle, machine learning competition that Google was hosting. And in that competition, you needed you don't have train set, you don't have test set, but you need to build a model that will build amazing generalized embeddings for images. And I made a couple of submissions, and they look, how is it going? And it looked like out of all this like models that were trained on ImageNet, the best were Clip. Clip is the model like released by OpenAI about like a couple years ago, and it generates amazing embeddings for images, for texts, and what is more important, the images and text, they kind of like work in the same space. So it allows you to basically compare or like use search in them. So, but for the sake of this model being the best, I built search engine. I took ImageNet 21K, open images, and whatever like places, and build a search index in which you write some upload images and it finds you similar. And my claim was, okay, let's take this, let's do this. You train a model, you have validation set, you evaluate your model on this validation, you pick like 1,000 on which your model doesn't perform well. You don't know why it doesn't perform well. Lighting is bad, or color distribution, or objects are hard. You don't know and you don't care. You look for similar using my search index, you send them for labeling, and label them, and your model is improved. Looked like a good idea because I did something similar when I was working at machine learning competitions, and when I worked at Lyft, it had value, and I could see that if at some point quality that I was building this summer, someone proposed to me when I worked at Lyft, I would probably make our managers to pay for the service. It was the idea. So I did this. I kind of like made a website, and no one used it. Problem number, so yeah, so no one used it. Problem number one, images, they, it's unclear what, like, can you use it for production? Because like all they was created from the internet. Problem number two, I needed to show some demos, some value that improved the performance. I tried to use this trick myself to fine tune ResNet that was already extremely fine tuned on ImageNet, and I got some marginal value that didn't like worth it. And it came to September. Then I needed to think what to do next. I looked around, and there was like a company called Lexica Art that raised $5 million, and their website looks exactly as mine. You have some like website, you can input images or text, and you get the result, a bunch of URLs, a bunch of images. But instead of like what I was doing with like natural images scraped on the internet, they were doing this with generated images. So just like, okay, so if they like raised $5 million, like most likely they have some idea or some direction that's like better than my data labeling story. And I switched and I replaced in my search engine from these natural images to the generated ones. And that's basically main idea. After that, I added some Telegram bot and Chrome extension, things like this. But overall, it's still search engine on the generated imagery.
You mentioned a lot of interesting point. The first of all, it's the problem that I know, and a lot of people communicate about this problem, how legal to use random downloaded images from internet. Can you use open images or ImageNet for your to train your model? Do you know the answer for this problem?
So I can tell you a bit more, slightly different perspective. So when I came to Lyft, and we started using pre-trained models, and just out of curiosity, I asked our legal team, can we use pre-trained models trained on ImageNet to fine-tune them to do our self-driving? And I expected answer either yes or no, something, yeah. And answer that I got, what are pre-trained models? And then we had like a bunch of meetings in which I tried to describe this story that you have like images and then you train models, but from these models you kind of deduce what images you to train on. And then on top of it, we train it. And so I needed to explain data and models and fine tuning and like everything like this. And so they said, we'll think about this. And I forgot about this. And somehow like this story disappeared. Then like about a year later, I wanted to like still get an answer. I was still curious because but maybe not from the terms of Lyft because they didn't know. I just wanted to in general. So I asked at the GitHub of PyTorch, of TensorFlow and OpenVINA exactly the same question, like what does your legal department, because all of you released trained models for PyTorch, TensorFlow and something trained models, and like, can you use them in production? And they gave some like politically correct answer, which like maybe, and they probably still at the GitHub that can be interpreted, we don't know. So it's up to you and your legal department. And so this is about models. This is the state. So in practice, as I understand, everyone is using them and everyone is like fine tuning, like, and like, if they want to train their own architecture, do this on ImageNet, they just don't like talk about this too much around. So in practice, legally, it's gray zone, but in practice, everyone does it.
Yes, because I know one pretty interesting case, but only one. Uh, it's, for example, it's A company and B company. The A company sell to B company pretty big data set, but without permission to publish this data set. The B company trains a model on this data set and publish this model. After that, there was a process between these two companies, and the big company won this process because it was very big company. And it's only a case that I know that according to this process, you can, the model is not derivative from the images that were at the start. So you can use any model trained on, so there is no link between the model and the existing dataset, but I'm not sure about this. I know only one case, and here's the problem. So I think it's everyone don't know, and it's
Yeah, it's
pretty
a great
interesting.
area. And let's say if I was like a big company like Scale AI and I can say, yeah, it's totally okay, and I convince, it's one story. But if like I'm no one and my startup is not like no one knows and no one will want to take a risk, I mean, just this idea about legal is kind of like, it's a big deal. And for generated imagery, like big thanks to the Stability AI who released their model, you can use images generated from it for any purpose, including commercial and non-commercial. And this is a big thing. And it's one of the reasons why I'm like, shifted to generated imagery, because like few different people ask me about it.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And the only problem, do they have right to publish these models? Because I'm sure that they use any
Yeah,
image and they...
about this, so for Stable Diffusion, I think there was like some big Reddit thread where people generated images using Stable Diffusion, and it generated like watermarks of iStock.
Yeah. I think it's not about Stable Diffusion. It's more about raw DALI or even original one DALI. But
Probably, yeah.
yes, I saw these images and it was very funny.
So it's still
Uh,
gray area, but yeah, it looks like working with generated images, in this opinion of the public, it's safer than on these images that you scrape from the internet. At least on the generated images, it's like less likely that you will be represented. But when it's scraped from the internet, they're real people, and they may not be happy that they like got all over the internet, like in the models.
So, and during your story, we come to an interesting point when you switch from ML engineer to artist, or who is your main auditory now?
Yeah, this is a good point. So like why I started it. So when I started it, I was looking at something pain that's familiar to me. And as a machine learning engineer, we always like struggle with more data, more relevant data, well-labeled data, things like this. But right now, yeah, for generated imagery, I still would be very curious to just do some kind of automatic labeling and not train ImageNet or something like purely on this generated imagery. It would be like a cool experiment. I mean, maybe nice paper for those that are interested. I can provide this data and labels. But yeah, it's one story. Right now, it looks like main target is could be different types of these artists. It can be game designers, or like movie designers, or like some other web designers. So for them, they may use these images as they are, let's say, like to enter to the website. But for game designers and movie designers, they use it as a references. So when I talk to them, and I have a few friends in this like area, so they have some text description of the movie. Some designer gave them some sketch of something, and then they asked, okay, now, and they like description of, let's say, of some scene in which it should be table and like carpet and door that should swing around or something like this. So some description of how heroes should interact with this scenery, with this scene, with this room. And then they need to generate something based on this. And to just not to use the purely imagination, they go to Pinterest and Yandex Photos and similar services, and they search for similar type of imagery, and then they dump it and they do it in large quantities. Under one of the my blog posts at Hubber, some guy mentioned that for games he needs about 14,000 images per day to view. Then he dumps them, then he reviews them to pick 10 that clicks with him and help him to do the next step. So yeah, on one side, they don't care about licenses, but on the second, it's format of the interaction is completely different from what machine learning engineers do.
Oh, it's pretty interesting. And I don't think about this in this manner. So it's just to boost the imagination and
Not just
very
imagination.
cool.
They may look at this some scene and say, okay, so, or for example, let's say you have some scene and you need to do some kind of factory in which some heroes are fighting and should be some kind of realistic industrial designs and pipes. They these designers may have no clue how real pipes look. So, and when they download this images of different factories and pipes, they don't just boost imagination. They copy paste or do something similar to make it look real, because you're doing this unknown type of machinery from the real objects. Again, it was also a surprise for me, but yeah.
It's excellent idea. And with such approach, you need a lot of different images to generate at start. How much images do you now have, or do you generate them during the when the person asks for new images? Because the generation process is pretty long. So how do you work with this problem?
Okay, so first of all, if you look at the internet, I know at least 3 companies or startups that are doing very similar to what I do: Crea.ai, PlaygroundAI.com, and Lexica.org. Crea raised, I think, $3 million at some point. Lexica raised 5. Playground, I don't know, but most likely will also raise something. And so all of these companies, including me, in the beginning, they didn't start to generating a lot, because you mentioned it's definitely expensive and long, and it's one of the pain points that I'm facing right now. But there's Discord dedicated to Stable Diffusion, where people dump and shared what images they generated collectively. And so at some point, someone scraped this Discord. And so right now, the internet, and I may share a link and you can add below the video, there is basically a link to the 10 million URLs to these images. Okay, sure, 15% of them are duplicates, but still you get 8.5 million of generated images they can download from the internet and then upload. And that's what I did. That's why I all this data that I have on the website, it's 8.5 million. I am planning to add generation in January, and so that people will generate and will be stored in something, but right now purely scraped from the Discord of some other server.
So you really stop thinking like ML engineer, and it's pretty cool. And I didn't expect that. It's a short answer. Okay, and it's a pretty interesting question, because ML engineer they thinking in some I don't know. You know how do they think, and how difficult to communicate with artists about this problem. And for example, in my life, when I discuss the new project with the person, I know that discussion will be much short and much easier when the person is from technical, technical stuff. And how do you work with this in this process with artists and the persons around?
First of all, about this, I would like to recommend. There's an amazing book, an amazing audiobook. It's only 3.5 hours long, called Mom's Test. I hope everyone should read this. It's about customer development. How do you talk to other people? And yes, so, and a general book about everything. Y Combinator is aggressively recommends it, and books is amazing. So in this sense, if you follow advice from this book, life is easier. And so one of the few advices is, and book is about how do you ask people about your project is amazing. And it starts with, if you ask your mom, I have this amazing idea about this startup search and generate images. How do you think, will it work? Just well, of course it will work. It's an amazing idea, no doubt in this. And you don't want this type of the feedback, about something you're building, because it gives you wrong impression, wrong direction. So in this sense, you need to ask proper question. Roughly speaking, proper question looks like this. If you ask someone, will we use this product or something like this, they typically say yes. And then you ask how much are you willing to pay for this? And they, just maybe not now, at some point, no. So you see, you need to do these clarifying questions about what are they willing to invest, and it's either money or reputation or some pilot or things like this. And so with artists, it was rather similar. So I talked to people and I asked them about the general flow. Let's say how people build this scene for 3D movies and how it starts from like what exactly do they do, what tools do they use, how do they collaborate, where do they dump the images, how many of them, what do they use to something. And at the end of the day, they say, okay, this is our pain, and that is our pain, and that is our pain. And I ask, how do you solve it? Oh, it's very painful. It's this, and this, and that. And just like, yeah, definitely. Like, are you willing to pay for this? No, of course not. It's just like, no. And realistically, the only thing that they're paying about, it's about collaboration tools. So for this, let's say game designers, so like other designers, they dump these images in some folders at Dropbox or Yandex or something like this. Then they filter them out, and then they use Mira, and they're paying for this because it's a collaborating tool to do this. The idea is more general. At some point, it wasn't a surprise for me in many ways, because when I thought about how to build a product out of Albumentations in summer, and Albumentations is a like open source library that are used for developers. It's not about collaboration of developers purely. You train a model, you can like make it more generalizable and like better performance. And so I talked to folks that are building like tools for developers and like the startups around, and general consensus was tools for developers is horrible business idea. Developers may like it, but they will not pay for this. Better idea is collaboration of developers, still better idea, but much better. And even better idea, collaboration of developers with like, other stakeholders, like managers or clients or like someone else. I believe the similar story is about artists. Tools for artists, it's a horrible idea. It should be collaboration of artists or collaboration of artists with, directors or someone who are building the movie, or in terms of this game designers. So yeah, it was basically challenging. So in this sense, story is very similar to ML engineer, with one exception. With ML engineer, they have understanding of what's technically real, what is not. And game designers, you listen about their pain, and they still from time to time propose solutions to this, and they're basically technically not real at all. Let's say one proposed to me, okay, if you build a platform in which we upload as kind of like textual description, and it will generate us like a full game, it would be amazing. And just like, yeah, it will be definitely amazing, but like it's technically unreal. And for machine learning engineers, it just doesn't happen. They know the boundaries of what's possible, what is not.
Excellent. And when you speak about community and guys around it, in Albumentation, you have a lot of community around Albumentation, a lot of people using it. The first question is, did some part from Albumentation community start to using your new tool at the start when you work on like ML project, like project for ML engineers? And the second question is, if it's not a secret, how big now is community around your project?
Okay, so a few things about Albumentation. So we could do better. People use it a lot, as I mentioned, but we definitely could have some centralized Slack or Discord server in which like people could like, give feedback and something. So at a time when we were aggressively like working on the library, we didn't do it for whatever reason, just messed up. Right now, it's a bit too late because it's like in a more passive regime. When I started doing this, like my project for like data labeling, and yeah, sure, some part of Albumentation community could like use it. I didn't do marketing aggressive enough. So there was basically people didn't know that it was such an option. So it's hard to say. I mean, few folks tried here and there, but it was close to nothing. About right now, again, I didn't do this marketing aggressively. The only thing that I'm doing is writing blog posts, just like in many ways there for me to log what was my thought process during the evolution. As you let's say there's like people like in Russian, like series of my blog posts about how I moved from academia to data science and to industry, and it's kind of like similar story, kind of like logging purposes. So this gives me some traction. For example, people are using Telegram bot very aggressively, which was a surprise to me. I have statistics that's measured using Mixpanel. I didn't build like extensive dashboard, but roughly speaking, let's say if we talk about websites, I mean, maybe 100, maybe 100, like 200 people visited per day and try to do something, download images, so maybe just like leave instantly. So it's rather small, because I know that for Create it's more than 2,000 visitors per day, and for like Lexic is significantly larger. But as I mentioned, the fact that people are visiting, it's amazing, but how much they pay, they don't pay anything. And that's where this threshold is. you need like for successful business paying customers.
Yes, exactly. And for now, you work more with the images that were generated by Stable Diffusion. And the first question, was it all able before the release of Stable Diffusion? And the second question is, do you try some experiment with Stable Diffusion, probably train it or modify for your cases? Or you just took clear output from Stable Diffusion from Discord channel, and that's all.
Okay.
How do you, yes.
Could you clarify the first question? I didn't get it fully.
The first question was the Stable Diffusion pretty big breakthrough, and was it before Stable Diffusion? Are you project? Yes, are you project? Can you start your current idea, for example, at the start of the summer, or there was no any open neural network to generate good images?
Okay, first of all, I'm not an expert in this. You should probably know this better. But second, as I understand, Stable Diffusion was a breakthrough in many ways. First of all, like inference speed drastically improved. It's one story. About quality of the images, I don't know. And second, Stable Diffusion released the model and make it said like you can use it for any purpose. So this was like, combination of two big things in this sense. Yeah. Scraping like, let's say, Midjourney or DALL-E and like doing search service based on them, of course I could. So in this sense it was possible. But yeah, Stable Diffusion make a big kind of like leap. And it happened at the end of the August. As I understand, they like shared it. So roughly at the same time when I was building this like search engine. About second question. So right now I'm working on this project like by myself. I'm building like front end and back end, and right now working the front app, and technically I need to do marketing. And let's say in winter I'm planning to play with raising money, and this is whole another skill. In this sense, I'm very limited in terms of like manpower. As I mentioned, finding technical co-founder at a time wasn't like that easy. Right now could be possible, but again, like didn't focus on this that much. Maybe if I'll be able to raise a bit of money, which is like questionable, I'll be able to hire someone and explore more opportunities. At the same time, as machine learning engineer, I know that basically instant you get into fine tuning of models, it becomes like infinite loop. You need to build some kind of infrastructure, and models may not work well. Even you see for Stable Diffusion, when they released version 2.0, it worked worse than 1.5. Even they have like, better model, more data and things like this. So for some time, I would prefer to stay away from fine tuning. But I still, there are like still some things that I may explore. For example, there's like thing that I have on my website that you don't have on others. You may do simultaneous text and image search. I have a blog post in which you can like upload an image of, let's say, a person or someone else. And then in the text, you say like red or Van Gogh or 3D rendered or something like this. And your search gives you some kind of like average. It's not generation, but some kind of like proxy of the generation. So yeah, I'm planning to add generation in winter. Right now, I don't like unit economy of the process. As we discussed, it's expensive and slow. And if it needs to make money, I need to figure out either how to make it like 10 times faster and 10 times cheaper, or how to charge people. So what pain should it solve for them? So in this sense, yeah, like fine tuning is like not looking for it, but I'm planning to add generation in addition to my search engine.
And as far as I understand, you don't plan to train or use any different neural network at this point. But what about your plans? So you want to make this search for nearest images, but what next? Are you aiming for investment and want to run to them pretty soon, or what do you plan to do after the investment?
Okay,
what is
so,
your
okay, let's do it like, let's say like in general, let's forget about myself, what I would like generative models to do. I would like them to make useless Google, Netflix, Pornhub, Stack Overflow, and other search engines. It would be amazing if, like, search engine, they were like good because they made, after building recommender systems, that they make everything personalized for you. And here I would like it to be whole another level. I would like to watch movie and I enter something that's generated and it's good personal for me, like some action thriller or whatever it is. It would be amazing long term. But it's like science fiction in many ways right now, but cool direction, who knows, maybe in 10 years. But from now to there, let's say I would like to go this direction. There should be some steps, should be some paying customers, some investments, some growth, some users in this sense. Yeah, I'm trying, like, talking to more people about their pain, doing something. About search engine, as I mentioned, that unit economy of generation doesn't match that well. I prefer to play a bit more with using search on extensive amount of generated image. Let's say if instead of 8.5 million, I would do 5 billion images, are really like different. And when person enters right now in generation, I don't know, Cheburashka with funny pink ears, it may be generated, or if volume of the data in your database is already big, it can provide you something that's already there. So for many things when you need, and it's much faster and much cheaper. So I'm looking for applications where generation solves some problem, and maybe looking for replacing it with this cheaper proxy, cheaper alternative that makes unit economy better.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think it was excellent interview, and I knew a lot of new stuff. Thank you very much, Vladimir. I hope probably we will recap everything in half of a year and look where it will go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.